I mean, if you're an ally, why wouldn't we work with you? Why do you have to convince us that you're our ally? Why do you have to basically go into every congressional office and convince them? And it's because they want to keep the money flowing. They've got a good return on their investment. I mean, we send more foreign aid to Israel than to any other country.
So recently, Thomas Massie was on Theo Vaughn's podcast talking about how Israel actually isn't the ally of the United States, despite the claims that they are. And also why AIPAC is the only foreign lobby of its kind compared to all the rest of the world. So let's watch and let's react. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Now, there's one group of lobbyists I don't think really should exist or should have access to U.S. offices, and those are foreign lobbyists.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard you talk about this before, and I've heard a lot of people are talking about it now. It's definitely become a hot topic. And AIPAC is one of the big ones. And that stands for American
Israeli political. It's not a fund. It didn't start out as a super PAC. So
Political Action Committee?
Public Affairs Committee. There we go.
Public Affairs Committee. American Israel Public Affairs Committee.
Now, a lot of times PAC stands for Political Action Committee, like you said, but these guys were started before there were Political Action Committees, so it stands for Public Affairs Committee.
Got it.
And they brag that they've spent more on elections than any other lobbying group.
And they spent over $1 million, over $100 million on just the 2024 elections. And that doesn't take into account all the money they spent on elections prior. It seems to be that they have a stranglehold, at least some form of stranglehold, over about 500 members of Congress. Massie is one of the only outliers, especially on the Republican side.
In the world?
In the United States.
In the United States.
In Congress.
Okay.
They now do have a Political Action Committee, and I forget what the name of it is. So AIPAC has a subsidiary that spends money to basically crack heads of congressmen. So there's two kinds of, by the way, there are two kinds of lobbying groups. There's access lobbying. That's where they're all your friends. They're never mean to you. Even if they don't like you, they'll buy you a steak dinner and they'll try to get you to hear out their point of view. And they figure, as long as I can get in that person's office, I'm doing well for the people I'm lobbying for. Okay. But then there are confrontational lobbyists like AIPAC, and AIPAC has transitioned into a confrontational lobbying group where if you don't do what they want, they come after you.
Wow.
And what's interesting about this is Ted Cruz was on Tucker Carlson's podcast recently talking about AIPAC and his spin that he puts on it. And Tucker Carlson asked him directly, well, what do they lobby you to do? Or what do they lobby elected officials to do? And Ted Cruz's immediate response was, not much, actually. Well, yeah, Ted, they actually do. They ask you to represent Israel's interests from within the United States, to saber rattle with all the countries that Israel wants the United States to do, to continue the aid of, $4 billion to Israel before October 7th, and last year is about $20 billion, and I think it's on pace to do that again today. It's to keep that money flowing, keep our foreign policy bogged down by the wars that you want to start in the Middle East, and involve the U.S. in its most dangerous entangling alliance outside of Ukraine, and certainly the longest lasting entangling alliance. That's what its job is.
And what does it look like?
They spent $400,000 against me in my last election. And they are basically advertised themselves as just all things Israel. They are lobbying for more money to go to Israel.
Yeah.
Which all the money we give to Israel is military money. So they are basically lobbyists for the military-industrial complex.
Got it. Understood. So, and I'll ask you some questions about that, the military-industrial complex, in a few minutes. But do you feel like Israel is a fair ally? Are they a good ally for us?
Well,
or is that too general of a question?
Well, I think it doesn't matter. Like, there's no big, giant Great Britain lobby. There's no Australian lobby. There's no German lobby.
Oh, the other countries don't have them?
No, not like this. This is singular. This is unique. I mean, if you're an ally, why wouldn't we work with you? Why do you have to convince us that you're our ally? Why do you have to basically go into every congressional office and convince them? And it's because they want to keep the money flowing. And they've got a good return on their investment. I mean, we send more foreign aid to Israel than to any other country.
Yeah, this is so true. And this is a great point that I don't bring up that much. And it's a different angle of thinking about this whole situation is why wouldn't the U.S. and elected officials just be incumbent upon working with countries without having to be convinced of it? No, they have to be convinced of it because it's enwrapped in the military-industrial complex, the war regime, and those that want lucrative contracts and money laundered out of the United States from the taxpayers through the military-industrial complex and to support all the wars that Israel wants. By the way, including the one that was just waged over Iran. And that's not going to stop. That's only encouraged Iran to want to seek nuclear weapons, and it pushes Russia and China closer together, and Russia, as an ally of Iran, isn't exactly going to be trustworthy looking at the United States in dealing with potential peace in Ukraine. That's the truth. And Massie's laying it out perfectly here. This is not the ally of the United States. Don't get me wrong. The United States is the ally of Israel. It's their sugar mama. It's their bankroll. We're the wallet for all the regime change wars that they've called for, including Iraq and Syria and Libya and now Iran. And that's not going to stop, by the way. Netanyahu's going to keep calling for regime change there and keep fanning the flames of this war propaganda that he has for the last 30 years, that they're inches away from acquiring nuclear weapons. Well, now they have a reason to, by the way.
Yeah.
They're, like 10 million people or something.
Yeah, I think
Tennessee, I don't know the population in Tennessee, but it's probably about, on that order.
Yeah, I think this year they said we spent like $12 billion, but that's not actual dollars. It's in military aid, right?
Yeah, it's dollars
like
that comes out of the Treasury. Yeah, but it's not like we give them. It's a gift certificate that's redeemable at Lockheed Martin and your local Raytheon.
Okay, got it.
That's exactly right. It's just the bomb makers, these industries that wouldn't exist if the U.S. wasn't embroiled in all these fruitless forever wars and the empire building schemes and bases all around the world and U.S. troops in every corner of the world. It wouldn't be existent in that kind of universe. But it is, and the Israel lobby furthers those interests, the military-industrial complex furthers those interests, and the neocons within the United States fight for all of it. And thankfully, Massie opposes it.
So that's kind of how that works.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Why do they have this carve out that's just for them? What do we get from Israel, do you feel like?
We got a lot of countries that hate us.
Yeah,
yeah, that's the truth, man. He said it in just so few words. That says everything. We have basically every country in the Middle East that hates us, for the most part, with a very small number of exceptions. We saw that with, throughout the last years of our foreign policy regime, the failed wars and the war on terror, Iraq, Afghanistan. We have the Abraham Accords, which didn't exactly make a lot of those countries happy. And it's all due to this country that we're subsidizing the security of when it's not really security. It's their ability to do whatever they want to massacre people in Gaza and start regime change wars that they aspire to, and they will continue to aspire to.
The things we get.
Well, especially right now with this stuff in Gaza, I think it's one of the worst PR campaigns I've ever seen in my life. If they're even, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, I just don't, it gives their government this extremely evil look to me, And I think to a lot of people,
Well, rough numbers, there are 2 million people in Gaza and 50,000 have been killed. That's 2.5%. Like they've killed 1 in 40 people in Gaza. If you did that in the United States, if you did 2.5% of 350 million, it'd be almost 10 million people dead in the United States. Everybody in Gaza is at this point related to somebody who's been killed. Like at least a first cousin you had killed. And then if you say how many have been maimed, it's probably 3 or 4 times that. So everybody in Gaza knows people who've been killed and maimed.
And
Yeah, and it's so sickening to support this and just to know that the long-term foreign policy ramifications on the United States are horrible for this. This is just insane, and they constantly claim that it's Hamas that they're going after. This is all Hamas. We can excuse collateral damage, they call it, not murder victims when it's innocent children pulled up from the rubble, by the way. They call them collateral damage or human shields. They just excuse that away because of Hamas. Well, Hamas hasn't lobbed a missile into Israel since April. And before that, they were barely able to lob any missiles whatsoever. The organization's totally dismantled. It has about 13,000 members if you want to be charitable. And the U.S. and Israel on the U.S. bankroll has killed an estimated 50 to 100,000 people at this point. About 1 in 40, as Massie says. It's treacherous, and part of the reason for this war in Iran was to take eyes off of it. That's just the truth.
Supporting it, right? That's also the part that makes it really tough sometimes to just be a person. It's like our tax money is going towards this, but I just hope that people in some of these other countries know that it's not regular, everyday people who would want to do these things, that it's like governments making these choices and it's corporate interests that make these choices. How would we stop it? Well, do we need this connection with Israel? What is it? No one ever explains what it's for, I feel like, right? That would help everybody have a much better understanding, because it starts to feel like America is just a shell company, an LLC for Israel. That's what it starts to feel like a lot of times.
Yeah, and they can't sell it. The marketing campaign to sell that they're our ally is senseless. You haven't heard a convincing case from it. The neocons try to do it all the time, and the Zionists, and it is convincing amongst the U.S. public. But if you sit back and take a look at the policies and the ramifications and all the negative PR and the disastrous effects that this has on the U.S. public, you can't possibly sell this. The best salesman in the world couldn't sell this. Billy Zane couldn't sell this.
Do you feel like that's realistic, or do you feel like that's off base?
I wouldn't send him a dime. Like, that's my position. I don't think whatever we're getting isn't worth it. And don't ask me to articulate the benefit, because I think the cost is greater than the benefit. Everybody in Gaza is, at this point, has to hate Israel, right? And by extension, those bombs, when they see American politicians go over there and sign the frickin' bombs that are going to kill women and children.
That was ghastly to see Josh Shapiro and others sign those bombs that would be dropped with the intention of killing people in the run-up to the 2024 campaign. That, I don't know how to say anything that spooks me out more than that. That was just, senseless and absurd on the most ghastly and grim level imaginable. And I said Billy Zane, but I meant Billy Mays, by the way.
What do we actually? There was just a clip with Ted Cruz that came up. Can you see if you can find
yes,
that? Trevin?
There was.
Where Tucker Carlson was interviewing Ted Cruz. Let me see. This is a scary interview. During the Tucker Carlson interview with Ted Cruz, it's confirmed. Israel's version of the CIA called Mossad spies. Oh, it's about spying. It's like what we get. Let's just watch it for a second.
Yeah.
Does Mossad share all of its intelligence with us?
Oh, probably not, but they share a lot. We don't share all of our intelligence with them, but we share a lot. It's a close alliance.
Do they spy domestically in the United States?
Oh, they probably do, and we do as well. And friends and allies spy on each other. And I assume all of our allies spy on us.
That's okay with you?
You know what? One of the things about being a conservative is that you're not naive and utopian. You don't think humans are all... Part of the reason socialism doesn't work is the mantra from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs doesn't work. As a conservative, I assume people act in their rational self-interest.
So it's conservative to pay people to spy on you?
It's conservative to recognize that human beings act in their own self-interest, and every one of our friends spies on us. And I'm not...
Do you like it? That's my question. I'm not asking whether they have motive to do it. Of course they do. I understand that. And by the way, I'm not mad at them. But you're an American lawmaker, so I just want to know, hold on, I want to know your attitude. Yeah. You said that your guiding principle, in fact, the only principle, the only criterion.
I said guiding, the overwhelming, I wouldn't say only.
Is it in America's interest? Is it in America's interest for Israel to spy on us, including on the president?
It is in America's interest to be closely allied with Israel because we get...
And that was a lie. It's just so absurd, just spinning in circles on this. And Ted Cruz isn't the most foolish guy on the neocon side. He's actually relatively well-spoken, but he can't answer this. He has no convincing retort to that because he just wants to be aligned with Israel, no matter how much that means, no matter how much they spy on us, no matter how bad they get us sucked into these foreign policy conflicts.
What do we get? That's the thing.
It's painful to watch that. So when I'm in a room with somebody and they say, "Can I talk to you, just frankly, is anybody listening?" I say, "Well, there's 3 nation states plus our own in my phone.
Yeah.
There's going to be Russia, China, and Israel.
They're in our phone?
No, not yours. Like, it's a lot of effort to anybody can be hacked. Okay.
Oh, I thought one of the reasons I got to go to Qatar recently, and I wonder if they hacked my phone. I thought they were good. I don't know if that's crazy.
I think it's probably continuously hacked. Okay.
That's what I'm thinking. It just seems like everything's hacked now. I get scared,
But if you're
I play the Israeli national anthem every 45 minutes.
Look, Amazon and Facebook know what you're saying in your phone, right? But probably Israel and Russia and China aren't devoting that effort and internet traffic, which can become detectable
to us.
That's a good strategy, though. Play the Israeli national anthem every few hours to try to prevent the hacking and stealing of data. It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Right.
But you're probably, why wouldn't you be trying to hear what the 535 people in Washington, D.C. who vote on bills, what they are thinking?
Yeah.
And then, also there are allegedly some congressmen who indulge in insider trading, but I would guess that there are probably some hackers who are also inside of congressmen's phones trying to figure out what the sentiment is in Washington, D.C., and then trading on that.
Wow. So there's always this extra layer kind of going on, it feels like.
Yeah.
But what do you think we get from Israel? I think it's just a big question. I think it's okay as a regular person, and I might get killed or something by Mossad or something, but what do we get from them as a country? Like, that's a big question America has right now. Is there something we just don't see? And
regular Americans have these attitudes when so much of our news is shifted toward things related to Israel. A lot of people talk about, anti-war dissidents and anti-Israel people are totally obsessed with Israel, but it sure seems like Israel is at the focal point of the neocons and the Zionists and the people that want to keep shoveling money their way and getting us involved in Israeli-related wars. Iran is one of them. So Theo's right on the money here. Americans don't want to care about that much stuff, but that's what our governors, that's what our rulers are focused on. Meanwhile, we're just trying to earn our living, have a good future for our children, fund our retirements, things like that. I mean, that is the common person, obviously. You guys watch this channel, you know how much I enjoy foreign policy. I know I'm not the average guy in that respect, but the average American doesn't want to get sucked into this stuff. I don't either, but I just focus on it because, I think I can bring some merit to the world, I guess, on that tune.
There is, just tell us what it is so we can operate accordingly,
No, I think they're the best lobbying group in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And the reason they can do it is you have dual citizens, people who are American and Israeli, who are allowed to give money into American politics, and because they're American, and by virtue of that, you're allowed to participate. But if you're a foreign national, you're not allowed to.
So,
yeah, and don't get me wrong, if it was dual citizenship with Russia, that would be a problem. You would hear that all over the mainstream media. This guy has loyalties toward Russia, especially if he votes against aid to Ukraine, by the way. He's a Putin stooge. He's a Russian agent. But you don't hear nearly as much that vitriol to people that have dual citizenship between Israel and the United States. That should be outlawed. That's literal foreign influence. And all these conservatives that call it globalism to, just yield to the demands of, other countries and the international consensus. Well, if you're allowing that from one country, you're moving closer to globalism than you are to actual sovereignty and localism and decentralized government. That was the original intention behind the United States, by the way.
They're one of the few countries that can donate money to what?
To super PACs, to members of Congress.
Other countries are not allowed to do that.
Well, I mean, they could if you were dual citizens, but there's not so many dual citizens, as it were.
Right, so they're not registered as a foreign lobby like other foreign lobbies would have to, register for. So they're not subject to all these restrictions. And AIPAC, gets away with it by saying, hey, we're an American lobby. And it's true, there are American citizens involved with AIPAC, but they're doing the bidding of a foreign government. If not, tell me one thing in which they've lobbied opposed to what the Israeli lobby wants. Ted Cruz couldn't name one. Actually, he skirted that question when Tucker asked him, but they can't name one thing that AIPAC doesn't lobbies for that Israel doesn't want. It's because it's a front. This is a foreign lobby. It's foreign influence. That's the way to say it. That's the truth.
But could somebody be a Russian and American dual citizen and serve in a Congress or?
Sure, and donate to congressmen. By the way, I have introduced a bill that would require members of Congress to disclose if they are dual citizens.
Good. We need that. We need to support that. It doesn't even go far enough. There shouldn't be dual citizens in Congress to the extent that we care about reflecting our people's interests above and foremost. America first, not Israel first. We've had too much of the Israel first thing in Iran and Iraq and Syria and Libya and all this nonsense.
And I think that's only fair.
Right, because right now you could have allegiance to another country, not just the USA.
Correct. We swear an allegiance when you're a member of Congress to the Constitution. I always like to point this out. We're not swearing it to the country. We're not swearing it to the president. We're not swearing it to our party. We swear it to the Constitution.
Right.
And other countries have constitutions too. What if you've taken allegiance to two different constitutions? Like the American, my bill wouldn't even keep you from being a member of Congress. It would just say you have to disclose it if you are.
And I'd go further than his bill, but this is the right step in that direction. And he's right. If your loyalty is torn between two constitutions with different structures, different guidelines, different set of powers, and different priorities and cultural values wrapped up into it, who is your loyalty really to? Can you really swear an oath to protect and defend the Constitution? I don't think so. And, honestly, when elected representatives swear that oath to uphold the Constitution, they don't mean it, by and large. I think Massie means it, but they do swear fealty to their own party, their own prerogatives, their own national lobbies that interest them and, support them. AIPAC's one of those. They also do this to, big pharma, big tech lobbies, big ag, big telecom, you name it. They're beholden to lobbies and not the Constitution. And when you add a different country to the mix, well, you're even further removed from being actually representative of the people.
And by the way, it wouldn't necessarily just be Israel members of Congress who are also citizens of Israel. It could be other countries as well. I just think it creates a conflict of interest. And I have to disclose yearly which stocks I own. Mm-hmm. I have to disclose all my personal financial information so that the voters can decide if I am unduly influenced by that conflict of interest. And so that's the structure of my bill. My bill it's an election disclosure. Okay, you're running for Congress.
Bring it up.
Tell us which countries you are
Representative Thomas Massie announces the introduction of H.R. 2356, the Dual Loyalty Disclosure Act. Representative Massie's legislation amends the Federal Election Campaign Act to require candidates for federal office to disclose both their possession of dual citizenship and also the foreign country in which their dual citizenship is held. So right now, people don't have to disclose?
Nope, they don't.
What?
And I just wonder how many of them there are. We know that some exist. Some are proud about that fact and have admitted that. But, it'd be interesting to see, if only to yield that information, to allow Americans to see that information, but also it exposes this conflict of interest so that the public can see, well, if you're voting in a pattern that establishes you care more about this other country than ours, we can look at that. People always talked about all the influence that Russia had in the U.S. Congress. It was bogus. The real influence is from the Israeli lobby and the Ukrainian lobby right now. And the new thing is Qatar, because the Russian thing didn't stick. They're now saying that, Qatar has way too much influence in our political system. Just ignoring the Israeli influence, which is staring at us in the face as if we were looking at it through a mirror. This is absurd, and Massie's bill would do a lot to rectify the problems that exist with this.
I have no idea.
Have you seen Spies Like Us, dude?
It's also, by the way, it's a safety net, by the way. If something went really bad, you could just go live in your other country. I think you should be all in for this country.
I agree. This ain't the fucking hokey pokey, dude. I think you got to have both feet in or both feet out. You know what I'm saying, dude?
Theo Von cracks me up, man. He's great.
But any country this could happen. It could be. So that's not just Israel.
Correct. It could be any country. It could be.
But Israel's the only one that has a big lobby.
So
is there the Russian, like Russia PAC or whatever?
No, there is not.
That's a hoax. They said, you're a conspiracy theorist if you don't buy into this Russiagate thing and all the influence that Russia has over our officials. And actually, it was Russiagate that was the hoax. And the whole Russia operatives controlling everything in the United States was a total hoax. If that was true, the U.S. would have gotten out of Ukraine day one anyways. It wouldn't have even had that absurd foray into Ukraine, overthrowing the government in 2014, expanding NATO, and getting involved in Ukraine first to the tune of $200 billion. The whole thing's a scam, and Massie sees through it. That's what I love about him.
Like I say, there's not even Australia PAC or Great Britain PAC. I mean, because they're natural allies. Why would they have to lobby Congress? They're also not on our teat, like asking for money.
Yeah.
But I think it's also, it's a weird amalgamation of combined interests. There's a military-industrial complex that is all in for everything AIPAC is for. And, and before I banned AIPAC from my office, we used to have conversations that would go something like this. Oh, you should be for the foreign aid that goes to Israel because it all comes back to the United States in the form of military spending. We're buying it all from American contractors. And it'd be like, no, that's not a convincing argument to me.
Yeah, me neither. That's an absurd argument because we don't want that. We shouldn't want bomb makers to make incredible amounts of money on killing people and just encourage that industry at a time when it's better to withdraw from these fruitless foreign war theaters, stop empire building, stop expanding the empire across seas. We just saw the folly of it in Iran. Thankfully, the worst scenario doesn't seem to have played out in that situation, at least yet, but it will come up again. The neocons and, the Netanyahu supporters and Netanyahu himself will continue to talk about regime change, always planning for it, always desiring it, and always trying to drag the U.S. into it. But the entire project of the military-industrial complex is linked so closely with the Israeli lobby because so much of the money that the U.S. has spent on overseas wars has going to things that Israel wanted. I talked about it a few times in this video, but the Iraq war, well, the Israelis wanted that war. Netanyahu got in front of Congress as a regional expert and said that would cause immense positive reverberations throughout the region. Well, we saw how it really turned out. It ended up in a 20-year occupation where ISIS and then Islamic fundamentalists of various stripes took control of the government and still have control of it today. That's the fruits that's yielded from it. We saw it in Syria, where Assad was eventually overthrown. The U.S. spent $15 billion through U.S. aid to try to enact regime change there through Operation Timber Sycamore under Obama, continuing through Trump. And they finally got the regime change last year. And guess who it was on behalf of? Al-Qaeda. You had John McCain posing with these Al-Qaeda forces that were being supported by the U.S., Al-Qaeda, to overthrow that regime because Assad was Israel's enemy. Israel also didn't like Gaddafi, so the U.S., created a no-fly zone, enforced that, and funded a coup, a U.S.-led NATO coup, alongside rebels that overthrew Gaddafi. All these things just have no benefit to the U.S. It's certainly not for our national defense. And the Israel lobby has way too much money and influence over our politicians. They've given, AIPAC and AIPAC-linked groups have given Trump over $200 million. Miriam Adelson gave Trump $100 million. Trump boasts about how closely attuned he is toward the interests of Israel. He boasted about, moving the capital, the U.S. embassy, I should say, to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv because that would jeopardize any potential of a future Palestinian state, because Eastern Jerusalem in that region is envisioned as the future center of a potential Palestinian state. Well, that jeopardizes it. He also supported the Abraham Accords, and many people in Congress supported that. And his own DHS told him, well, that will cause tensions in the region. with other Middle Eastern powers, but did he care? No. The Israeli lobby has way too much control and influence. They're not the only one, but they are one of the most relevant, if not the most relevant, in terms of their foreign policy ramifications. And as Massie says here, they're the most powerful lobby, he believes, in Washington, D.C. But I do want to hear from what you guys say. Let me know in the comments below. Do you think AIPAC should be forced to register as a foreign lobby? Do you think it should be disbanded? How do you think we can do away with the influence of AIPAC? Is it even possible in today's political environment? Let me know down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and please consider becoming a YouTube member or Patreon patron to support my work and support the channel. I'd really appreciate that. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.